The 1970s were a time when black fathers and grandfathers could fix anything with their hands, their tools, and knowledge passed down through generations. These men did not need YouTube tutorials or Google searches. They had skills that made repairmen look unnecessary. But most of this wisdom has been forgotten. Here are 25 ways black men fixed everything in the 1970s without the internet. Keeping a well-organized toolbox in the garage was the foundation of every black household in the 1970s. That toolbox was sacred territory, and every man knew exactly where each tool belonged. Hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, and pliers all had their designated spots, and children learned early not to borrow tools without permission or to return them to the wrong place. Fathers spent Sunday afternoons organizing and cleaning their tools, treating them with the same respect they gave their work clothes. The toolbox represented self-sufficiency and the ability to handle whatever broke down. Men who could not find their tools could not fix problems, and problems that went unfixed cost money the family did not have. For black men stretching every dollar, that toolbox was worth more than anything in the house, because it meant never having to call a repairman. Sons learned to identify tools by name and function, training that would serve them when they had their own households to maintain. Using wire hangers to fix car antennas was a trick every black father seemed to know. When the car antenna broke or was stolen from the neighborhood, fathers did not rush to the auto parts store. Instead, they straightened out a wire hanger, attached it to the antenna base, and restored radio reception instantly. Kids watched their fathers work this magic in the driveway, turning trash into a perfectly functional replacement. The wire hanger antenna sometimes worked better than the original, pulling in AM stations from across the state. This was not a temporary fix, but a permanent solution that lasted for years. Black men understood that the problem was reception, not appearance, and a coat hanger solved the problem just fine. This practical wisdom saved money and taught children that solutions did not have to look fancy to work perfectly. Fixing leaky faucets with new washers was routine maintenance that black fathers handled without a second thought. When the kitchen or bathroom faucet started dripping, fathers would shut off the water, disassemble the faucet, and replace the worn rubber washer that was causing the leak. A bag of replacement washers cost almost nothing and lasted for years. Kids would hold the flashlight and hand their fathers tools, learning the anatomy of a faucet and understanding how simple the fix really was. The dripping sound that drove mothers crazy would disappear, and water bills stayed manageable. Plumbers charged good money for this simple repair, money that stayed in the family when fathers handled it themselves. This knowledge was passed from grandfather to son, ensuring that no generation would waste money on something so easy to fix. Patching car tires with plug kits kept families rolling when nails and glass threatened to strand them. Black fathers kept tire plug kits in the trunk right next to the spare, ready for roadside emergencies. When a tire went flat from a puncture, fathers located the hole, reamed it out, and pushed in a rubber plug coated with cement that sealed the leak permanently. The whole repair took 15 minutes and cost almost nothing compared to buying a new tire. Sons crouched beside their fathers on hot asphalt, learning a skill that would save them countless times over their lifetimes. The plug tire could run for thousands more miles, often outlasting the rest of the tread. For black families who could not afford to replace tires every time something went wrong, the plug kit was essential equipment that turned potential disasters into minor inconveniences. Adjusting television antennas by hand was a family ritual that black households performed every time reception faltered. Before cable television, getting a clear picture meant positioning the rabbit ears or rooftop antenna just right. Fathers would stand behind the television, moving the antennas inch by inch, while kids shouted updates about the picture quality from across the room. Sometimes aluminum foil wrapped around the antenna tips improved reception, a trick that seemed like magic but worked reliably. Finding the perfect position required patience and a steady hand, and once it was found, everyone knew not to bump the television. Fathers understood that signals bounced off buildings and trees, and they used this knowledge to aim antennas toward broadcast towers. This hands-on problem solving taught children that technology could be understood and manipulated with common sense and persistence. Keeping Butte 40 and duct tape within reach was the unofficial rule of every Black household in the 1970s. These two items could fix nearly anything, and fathers knew exactly when to use each one, if something was supposed to move but did not. Butte 40 loosened it up. If something moved but was not supposed to, duct tape held it in place. Squeaky doors, stuck locks, loose handles, and broken hinges all surrendered to this powerful combination. Fathers would spray or tape with confidence, knowing these fixes would hold for months or years. The silver tape became a badge of resourcefulness, visible on everything from car bumpers to vacuum cleaners. Kids learned that expensive repairs were often unnecessary when these two items could solve the problem. For Black families, making every dollar stretch, Butte 40 and duct tape were investments that paid for themselves many times over. Bleeding car brakes in the driveway saved Black families hundreds of dollars throughout the 1970s. When the brakes felt spongy or the pedal went too far to the floor, fathers knew air had gotten into the brake lines. Instead of paying a mechanic, they would jack up the car, have a son pump the brake pedal while they opened and closed the bleeder valves, and worked the air bubbles out of the system. The process required patience and teamwork, with father and son communicating through shouts and hand signals. Fresh brake fluid replaced the old, and suddenly the brakes worked like new again. Mechanics charged labor rates that working families could not afford for a job that took an hour at home. This knowledge meant safety did not have to be sacrificed when money was tight. Sons who helped their fathers bleed brakes grew up knowing they could handle their own car maintenance. Fixing broken window screens with patches kept bugs out without expensive replacements. When screens developed holes from age or accidents, Black fathers did not buy new ones. They cut patches from spare screen material, placed them over the holes, and secured them with screen spline and a roller tool. The patches were nearly invisible and kept flies and mosquitoes where they belonged, which was outside. Kids helped by holding screens steady while fathers worked, learning that small problems caught early stayed small. A roll of screening and some spline cost a few dollars and lasted for years of repairs. Summer evenings with windows open and no bugs inside were the reward for fathers who knew this simple fix. This practical knowledge meant cool breezes could flow through the house without the annoyance of insects. Replacing car belts and hoses before they failed was preventive maintenance that Black fathers understood instinctively. They would pop the hood on weekends, squeeze belts to check for cracks, and press hoses to feel for soft spots that signaled trouble ahead. When a belt showed wear, they replaced it themselves, knowing the alternative was being stranded on the side of the road. Radiator hoses, heater hoses, and power steering lines all got the same attention. The parts cost a fraction of what mechanics charge for labor, and the work took less than an hour. Sons standing over the engine compartment absorbed lessons about anticipating problems before they became emergencies. For Black families depending on their cars to get to work, school, and church, that upkeep was not optional. Fathers who kept up with belts and hoses kept their families moving reliably. Using a plunger correctly was fundamental knowledge that Black fathers passed to their sons without embarrassment. When toilets clogged, there was no need to call a plumber if you knew proper plunging technique. Fathers taught that the plunger needed to seal completely around the drain, that you pushed down slowly and pulled up sharply, and that patience mattered more than force. The right technique cleared clogs that seemed impossible, saving the cost and embarrassment of having a stranger come into the bathroom. Every household had a plunger stored discreetly but accessibly, ready for the inevitable. This unglamorous skill was practical wisdom that every man needed, and fathers made sure their sons understood before they left home. Rewiring. Lamps and appliances at the kitchen table was common practice for Black fathers who refused to throw away fixable items. When a lamp stopped working or a small appliance quit, fathers would cut off the old cord, strip the wires on a replacement cord, and connect everything properly before wrapping the joints in electrical tape. Kids watched closely, learning which wire went where and why the connections mattered. A few dollars worth of replacement cord saved countless lamps, fans, and kitchen appliances from the garbage. Fathers understood that the motor or element usually still worked fine, and that only the cord had worn out. This electrical knowledge meant that nothing with a plug was thrown away until it was truly beyond repair. For Black households that valued their possessions, rewiring extended the life of items for years, beyond when others would have replaced them. Sharpening lawnmower blades twice a season kept grass looking professional without expensive landscaping. Black fathers would remove the blade, clamp it in a vise, and run a file along the cutting edge until it was sharp enough to slice paper. A dull blade tore grass rather than cutting it, leaving brown tips that made the whole yard look sick. Sharp blades meant clean cuts, healthier grass, and a yard that matched anything in better neighborhoods. The sharpening took 30 minutes and cost nothing but effort. Fathers who maintained their own equipment took pride in yards that showed their care. Sons learned that tools needed maintenance and that sharp blades made every job easier. For Black families working to maintain their homes and their dignity, a well-kept yard was a statement that required only knowledge and effort, not money. Fixing stuck drawers with candle wax or soap was a trick Black fathers used throughout their homes. When wooden drawers started sticking, fathers would rub a candle or a bar of soap along the runners, creating a slick surface that let the drawer glide smoothly again. The method also worked on windows that stuck in their tracks and on doors that dragged on their frames. Jump-starting car batteries with jumper cables was emergency knowledge that every Black father possessed. When a car would not start on cold mornings, fathers pulled out the jumper cables, positioned another car nose to nose, and made the connections that brought dead batteries back to life. Connect the red clamp to the positive terminal, the black clamp to the negative terminal, and always connect the dead battery last to avoid sparks. Patching holes in drywall made walls look new without hiring contractors. When doorknobs punched through walls, Black fathers mixed patching compound, applied it in layers, and sanded everything smooth before painting. A tub of patching compound cost a few dollars and fixed dozens of holes over the years. Cleaning and gapping. Spark plugs extended engine life and improved gas mileage. Fathers would pull the plugs, wire brush away carbon buildup, check the gap with a feeler gauge, and reinstall the plugs. The whole process took less than an hour and made engines run smoother while burning less fuel. Using penetrating oil on rusted bolts saved countless projects from frustration. When bolts would not budge because of rust, Black fathers sprayed penetrating oil and let it soak in before trying again. Sometimes they tapped the bolt with a hammer to help the oil work into the threads. Patience was the key, and fathers knew that forcing a rusted bolt only made things worse. Replacing light switches and outlets was electrical work that Black fathers handled confidently. When a switch stopped working, fathers would cut the power at the breaker box, remove the old fixture, and wire in the replacement. They taught sons to always test with a voltage tester before touching wires. A new switch cost less than $1, while an electrician charged for a service call plus labor. Stopping toilet runs by adjusting the flapper was a fix that Black fathers performed countless times. When the toilet would not stop running, fathers lifted the tank lid and diagnosed the problem. Usually the flapper needed cleaning or the chain adjusted so it sealed properly. Understanding the flush mechanism meant fixing it was simple and obvious. Rotating car tires in the driveway ensured even wear and extended tire life. Fathers would jack up one corner at a time and move each tire from front to back, following patterns they learned from their own fathers. New tires were expensive, so making them last was essential for families on tight budgets. Fixing squeaky floors with talcum powder or screws could silence annoying noises. When floorboards squeaked, fathers sprinkled talcum powder into the cracks to lubricate the wood, or they drove screws through the subfloor to secure loose boards. The squeaks disappeared, and the floors felt solid again. Unclogging drains with a plumber's snake saved families from expensive service calls. When sink or tub drains ran slow, fathers fed the flexible metal snake into the pipe, cranking the handle to break through what was blocking the flow. Hair and soap buildup wound around the snake tip and came out with a satisfying pull. Adjusting car drum brakes with proper clearance kept families safe. Black fathers would jack up the car, remove the wheels, and adjust the brake shoes so they sat at the right distance from the drums. Too close and the brakes would drag. Too far and stopping would take too long. Fathers had learned the proper feel from their own fathers. Using Bondo to repair car dents and rust spots kept vehicles looking respectable. Black fathers would sand down damaged areas, mix the two-part filler, apply it to the dent, and shape it before it hardened. After more sanding and primer, the repair disappeared under fresh paint. Body shops charged hundreds of dollars for work that fathers did for a few dollars. Changing car oil in the driveway was a regular ritual that Black fathers performed religiously. Every 3,000 miles, fathers would slide under the car, drain the old oil, replace the filter, and pour in fresh oil. Engines that received regular oil changes ran for hundreds of thousands of miles. The oil stains on the driveway were badges of self-reliance. Passing down repair wisdom from father to son was how Black families preserved knowledge worth more than money. These lessons happened in garages, driveways, and basements, where fathers showed sons how things worked and how to fix them when they broke. The teaching was hands-on and patient, with explanations that made sense and mistakes that became learning opportunities. Sons absorbed not just techniques, but a mindset of self-reliance that shaped their approach to every challenge. For Black families who built everything through their own efforts, this wisdom was a precious inheritance that required no lawyer and no paperwork. The skills lived in hands and minds, ready to be passed to the next generation. Today, many of these tricks have been forgotten, but the love, patience, and pride behind them remain. Which repair skill from the 1970s do you remember learning from your father or grandfather? Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe to keep these memories alive.